Hello and welcome to Paradise Found Plant Nursery. We're a little nursery based in Hale in Cheshire, and following a lot of questions from customers about the plants and where they should plant them and what's the best plant for the right place, we're going to do a little series of tutorials. This week we're going to start off with looking at alpines and planting up troughs. So before you start your planting up, you want to pick the plants that you want. I'm not going to give you specific plant names. I think you should just go out there, find your local nursery or go online and pick plants that you like. But try to combine plant shapes and colours and textures that add a little bit of interest to your pot. In this one we're also going to put a couple of little stones, but again I'll explain that later when we start planting. So the first thing you should consider when you're picking your pot is your drainage holes. As you can see, this one, it's got really large drainage holes, so I'm actually going to use some broken pots, and as they are crocks, just to cover those holes up to make sure that we don't lose any compost down there. The next thing you're going to need on top of there is gravel. This is the most important thing you need to add to one of your pots. Lots and lots of gravel. The one thing your alpine are not going to appreciate is sitting in water or damp soil, especially over winter. So as you can see, I'm putting quite a thick layer in, making sure all that's covered up nicely. Now for us, the next thing that we always put in is a little layer of hessian, simply because we have lots of it lying around the nursery. And the reason that we put this in before I put compost in is it stops, over the years, you're going to stop the compost washing through the gravel and into your drainage holes. Okay, so once you've got your gravel in and you've got your hessian down or any other material that's going to prevent that compost over the years being washed through that gravel and into those little drainage holes of yours, you're then going to look at your compost. Now it's really important that for these alpines we recreate an environment that they're happy to grow in. So for that you're going to need a good compost, but you're going to add at least 50% gravel to that mixture before you put it into your pot. So we're going to fill that up, but not all the way, before we start putting these plants in. So once you've added your compost with all that extra grit in, don't fill it up all the way because you're going to add a few things to your pot now. For a little bit of interest and to split up one of the very delicate plants which I want to add to this pot, I'm going to use some stones. This is also just for interest, just to make it look nice, add a little bit more texture to your pot. So pop those in first, get them wedged in quite nicely, and then you're going to look at your plant selection. So first I'm going to go for the biggest one. So this one's in flower now, as you can see, nice big rosettes. It's going to spread quite away. Just going to sculpt out a little place for that and drop it in. But I'm going to make sure that I leave it sitting quite proud on the soil, because what you'll see afterwards, I'm going to fill in around all those plants with plenty of gravel, which will aid the drainage, stops the water sitting around the neck of the plant, which will only rot it. It's important that you combine different textures in your plant pot. Don't plant everything up to look exactly the same, but also consider your heights. So I'm going to pop that one in between those rocks there. This is my little delicate plant here. I love that. It's got beautiful small little white flowers. However, looking at the other plants here, you can just tell really that these two are going to take over this one if you leave it on its own. So these rocks here are just to help give a little barrier between this little delicate plant and everything else. I'm going to take a little bit of compost off of that as well. It's a little baby. So I'm going to pop that one right in at the edge there, firm it in nicely. And we're going to go for the bigger one. And again, when you're picking your plants, try to find ones that flower at different times of the year as well, to make sure you've got plenty of interest. And I've also got a couple of little rosettes, a little sempervivum there. Again, they survive in hardly any compost, any soil at all. I need it for those. I'm literally just going to throw a little bit of compost in there and just tuck those in on top, and I'll just bed those in with some gravel afterwards. Okay, so once you're happy with all the placement of the plants, and again with an alpine bed, don't be too tempted to cram all these plants in or put too many in a pot. They are all going to spread, so if you put too many in first time, you're not going to be able to enjoy them. They're going to be having to be dug up and divided within a couple of years. So now that I'm happy with that arrangement, I'm happy with the colours and the combinations I've got, I'm now going to top it with a lot of gravel. So like I said before, don't plant your little plants too deep, or you want to plant them slightly proud on the compost, which means when you put the gravel in, it's just going to go around the neck of the plant. So if you can, try to just get it around the plant without swamping them. And again, the little sempervivums, as you can see, will just sit on top of that gravel, and they'll quite happily spread through that. But also, the reason for not filling your planter up with too much soil at the beginning also now makes sense, because you can fill the remaining space up with the gravel. this is the finished article. It'll need watering in, and I would suggest to you that if you're going to have any warm weather, that you continue to water it in, only lightly of course, just to make sure that all these plants root and don't dry out too much in hot sun. And again, don't water them in winter at all, they should be absolutely fine. Basic care, removing dead flowers and spent blooms as and when necessary, and the odd little tidy up, and that's your perfect little garden that you can have even in the smallest little space. So the one we've just planted up is a concrete one, but don't forget you can use little things like terracotta bowls. The same principle applies. Consider your drainage hole. You want to put some crocks in there, some gravel. Don't forget your little piece of hessian or something to stop the compost going through. Or alternatively, a little bit rarer these days, an actual real stone trough. These we can actually have produced from a local stonemason. So obviously if anyone's interested and you want to have a real stone trough planter outside your home, by all means contact us, because it's something that we can actually source these days. Quite a rarity though. But again, I'm going to plant this up and we'll show you at the end of the video, but again exactly the same rules apply. Drainage holes here must be protected, and again we're going to use a little bit of hessian. So hang around for a second and I'll show you this planted up shortly. Okay, so this is the stone one that's been planted up and completed. Again, when you're thinking about your alpines, they don't all have to be really low. This is a stunning little poppy that we have, a little bright orange poppy that's quite happy in well-drained conditions, doesn't need a deep root run, and again this will work perfectly in a little alpine pot, and a little bit unusual, just a little bit taller. Unlike us, I would always suggest if you're going to plant up an alpine, it's going to be quite heavy, particularly this one as it's real stone. Pot it up where it's actually going to be, because all we've got to do now is move this.